Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today I want to do another video about a surveillance camera, but with a little bit of a twist, because I'll be straight with you, although I've talked a lot about surveillance products over the last few years, very few have been requested as many times as this one, the Reolink Doorbell. Now, quick disclaimer and a bit of a history of the channel. Reolink is probably the channel the camera brand I talk about the most here on the channel. I talk about a lot of different camera brands, ones that are supported of NAS either officially or kind of slightly want to work around via RT or like OnViv or something like that, or using their own software. But one of the reasons I talk about Reolink probably more than any other brand is largely because they are one of the few brands that have really identified a middle ground between pricing and what you get in terms of value and quality of the product. I'm not going to say they are up there with like Axis level high-end cameras, but they're certainly better than a lot of the budget level stuff that's knocking around out there. Now, why has this product been requested for almost a year more than any other camera that I've talked about on the channel? Well, nice and simple. It is a wireless doorbell, but it's a wireless doorbell that supports OnViv. It supports OnViv, which means it can work with NAS. And indeed, before I can go even further into this review, linked in the description is friend of the channel, RJ, the surveillance guy, and down there, he was one of the first to review this product. And in his reviews, he not only showed that it worked with the Synology NAS system, but also we got it working with like Google Home and Alexa and stuff like that. So when that rolled out, a lot of people were interested in this product because doorbell wise, you've got your Ring and stuff like that, but they're all third party, they're bouncing off another server there. And there's just that vibe about when you're strapping a camera to your home or business environment, you really care about who can see it. Now, there are question marks, of course, when you buy a camera, everything ranging from encryption to where you're buying it in the world, and therefore the encryption standard and availability. But I would say more than anything, you want to keep things in a closed loop, and therefore getting a doorbell camera that you can integrate into your existing NAS surveillance setup is tremendously appealing for many users. But enough of that, let's get this unboxed and talk a little bit about it. This is the Wi-Fi model of the doorbell camera from Reolink. There is a PoE version of this camera. This one is the wireless doorbell that also arrives with the connected doorbell chime device that we'll talk about later on. And it retails starting at $87, $88, all the way up to $109. But again, that does depend on where in the world you buy it, based on your region, whether you're going for the PoE or not. And if you buy it directly from their own store, they've got a bunch of promos on there at the moment. Again, they might be one of those stores that just does promos all the time, who knows. But it is available on Amazon and the like. Now, it took them a long time. There were kind of issues with the first generation of this that seemed to be identified, hence why it got removed from sale for a brief period, which apparently have been completely eradicated. But let's have a little look. We have got the doorbell itself, more on that later on. It is normally in a little bag there. I removed it for a YouTube video a little while ago. Then we've got our connected mains plug chime. Again, make sure you get it in the right region of the world. My camera sensor does not like that white lens there, but again, it connects there on the rear. Let's try and get that at an angle when my camera sensor won't go nuts. Then we remove the little plastic shell, remove the cardboard shell, take a little look about the goodies that we get inside. So we've got a mains connector there, again, because this is the Wi-Fi model. If you're going PoE and you're wiring it into the wall there, then you don't have to worry about that. You can use your cat connector. You've also got that mains power extension. So again, if you are going to be using this outside your home, at least they've included the long range wire there to at least mains adapter it directly into your home via like a wall and like either trunk it in or pin it down quite neatly. You've also got there a little positive negative power adapter, and again, external connector as well. Then you've got the riser and the back plane there at the back to change the angle of the camera. If you do want to sort of mount it at a slight edge there, so you've got better coverage. You've got your RJ45 cable there, very short, but still. And again, I should highlight, although this is the Wi-Fi model, it does have an Ethernet connector there on the rear as well, depending on the setup you want to go for. And that's really it in terms of our powers and connectors. Then you've got the usual bump pack that these things arrive with always. So we're fully expecting those weird stickers that I don't think anyone actually uses. So we've got information on the declaration of EU conformity there, depending on where you are in the world. I will say, if you do go to their website and look at the specifications for this device, and they preset different tabs for different regions, the dimensions slightly change. Now I know there is restrictions in some regions requiring certain wireless frequency to not be accessible, but it's kind of odd that some of the dimensions are ever so slightly different. And I don't mean centimetre to millimetre conversions. I mean genuinely the dimensions are ever so slightly different. We've got first time setup manual there, and you've got an individual one for both the camera and the connected Chime there. You've got setup tips if we're going to be integrating it into a Reolink surveillance system. There is their own application, there is their own cloud, and of course we've already seen, again thanks RJ, that it can be integrated into both Google Home and NAS system there via OnVid. We'll hopefully show that later in the video. We've got the wall sticker there for guiding it and attaching it to your wall the first time, and more certificates of conformity depending on the region there that you're getting it for. And that's really it. So we didn't even get our mad stickers, which really surprised me. I don't like them anyway. So if we move all of that out of shot. Now talking a little bit about the Chime there, I will say that this Chime works on a different frequency. This doesn't seemingly connect via Wi-Fi to the rest of your local area network. This connects with the camera. This is still connected to your Wi-Fi network, and again with that LAN option there we just talked about, but this is kind of optional. You don't have to use the Chime. It's got 10 chimes. It's got audio back and forth. Again, you can do pre-record stuff with the application that can run from going out from the audio in and out from the doorbell. But this is kind of an option because a lot of users may not even want to use this, because what they want to use is smart capabilities to get information and notifications directly sent to their mobile device. Now, again, it's quite nice. It's, you know, reasonable enough there that it feels pretty rugged there. Again, it's plastic, but we've got buttons there on the side. We've got control of that. We're not too fussed about the connector. I know a lot of you are going to have that do. Who knows what the IP, chimes are going to be on that. We'll set it up later on. But with regard to the production quality of the product, it's mostly okay. It's not metal. That surprised me. I thought this would be metal. The base stand is plastic as well, if you want to go for the angular one or otherwise. But it is plastic there. If we squeeze it close to the mic. Again, that's the button. It feels pretty responsive. The button's got a good click to it there. In terms of picture quality, this is reported as a 5 megapixel camera at 2K. The resolution is 2560 by 1920 and a maximum 20 frames per second. It also has a 2-stream support there, so you can have a sub-stream that can be adapted from as low as 4 frames per second up to 15 frames per second there running in the background. They do report that this has 180 degrees coverage. I think that's a bit disingenuous, but I will have to check. I know it is an ever so slightly raised camera, but I'm not 100% on this whole 180. Particularly remember, again, as mentioned by our good friend RJ and other videos that we've discussed, that idea of spreading pixel density across that kind of resolution may be problematic. But almost certainly this is going to have a central focus to its development there, insofar as it's going to be caring a lot more about this area than anything else. It is a doorbell cam. This is not, you're going to be thinking of big surveillance. Now I say it's not for big surveillance. It still has access to the full range of Reolink's apps and services there. So again, you've got area of effect from what I can see. You've got recording and retention policies there as well, and scheduled usage hours as well. Wirelessly, it supports both 2.5 and 5 gigahertz, which is great to hear because I'm sick of the number of cameras I'm finding more and more that only support 2.4 gigahertz. I know it covers a greater range, but it's super annoying if you're not running a dual band router system. Recording, apparently it only records in H.264, which is going to be slightly less efficient in terms of spacing. But still, nonetheless, this isn't really designed for those long 24/7 recording patterns there overall. It has an SD card slot built into the base. So again, you've got 2 methodologies of recording there. If you only want to record just to it, you don't have to use the Reolink application from the Reolink cloud or use a NAS system to record onto there. You can just have the doorbell itself recording, but just bear in mind that if you're only going to rely on an SD card slot there with no kind of secondary backup or synced storage, if someone breaks the camera off, they've taken the storage. So as good as it is that it's got an SD card slot, and maybe for some of that edge recording, I still would maintain always just make sure you have a secondary record pattern for this, or at least a synchronized record pattern. Now, it's got two-way audio. It's also got local noise suppression there. When you are recording something that's going to be invaluable for a doorbell that may be near a main road or people just passing, neighbors and more. Also, when it comes to those recordings, it has very limited hard-coded AI support. And by that, what I mean is human and vehicle recognition there. So if a car drives past your house, the last thing you want is this camera telling you that a car's gone past your house. Yes, you can set it up to only record when you press the button, and indeed you can have it to record the 6 seconds prior to that as well, prior to recognition. So there will be users that only want to know when someone's at the door to get their phone to give them an alert to know when someone's at their door, courier, friend or foe. But there's also going to be users out there that are going to want to know when anyone's coming to their door. Not just the people that click the button, but the people who don't. And for those people, you can have the system set up for person recognition only. So if a person comes near your door, say you've had a package delivered and someone's knocked up to your house and they're going to try and half-inch that and run away with it, what you want is a camera that not only will recognise that a human has come to the door without pressing a button, but also is going to do that pre-record on the build-up to it as well, which is going to be quite nice. And again, having vehicle recognition, although you might be thinking, well, why do I care when a car's going to drive by? What you want is the camera to know that it's a car and then not bother having to alert you. That's where vehicle recognition will come in useful. You can have a customized zone of recording if you choose. If you're worried about that supposed 180 degrees, that all of this stuff over here is pointless and you just care about this zone here, you have that area support if you choose. Now, there is night vision. But as we've discussed on the channel before, Reolink's night vision is I'm not going to say hit or miss. It has improved, but given the density of this lens and what we're talking about here in terms of scope, I imagine that night vision is going to be so-so. We'll try to include that in our software recording in the other half of the video, but we've seen Reolink night vision before. We need a particularly good cameras to take advantage of some of that color night vision as well, and better lenses as well. And this obviously is quite a compact product, so they've had to really knock things down, not only on the SoC level inside, but obviously the lens as well and the CMOS. Now, when it comes to the audio in and out, that's going to be useful when someone goes bing bong, and then you speak to them, audio back and forth, and it does look pretty nice as well. But I will say what you can do within the scheduled setup, something I didn't realise until just before the recording of this video, is you can apparently set it up to, on a scheduled pattern, time of day, day of the week, have it so if someone presses the button, it actually gives an automated recording of, please leave parcel there, I'm out of the house at the moment. And if you're going to use it for a small business, there may be presets there or even custom records, I'll have to double check that might be good for you to have if someone presses it and you go, I may be 2 more minutes, I live on the 3rd floor, etc, etc. So having those pre-recorded things into this may be quite useful indeed. Now, when it comes to the alerts, going towards the Reolink app, obviously Reolink are going to prioritise their own hardware. They're going to prioritise their camera working with their software more than anything else. When we integrate it into the Synology NAS system, I don't think we're going to get much of those alerts. It's going to be interesting to see what happens on, say, a Synology NAS for surveillance station. When we click that button, what happens? Will the system give us just a generic alert, or will it do something a little bit more than that? In terms of support, there's a 2-year warranty on this camera, and again, the production quality wise, although they do not state what the IP rating for this is, which I'd want to know for a camera that's outside all the time. They do state it as weather, waterproof and stuff like that. But unlike any other camera in their lineup, they didn't give a specific IP rating for this camera, which is weird as far as I'm concerned. A lot of those cameras I've talked about that may be dotted around that have like an IP6, 6.6, 6.7, even 6.8 with some of the anti-tampering proof devices, they have never shied from giving an IP rating in terms of weatherproofing on their product. This is the first one that they have, which I find unusual. But what I'm going to do now is get this camera and indeed the Chime set up in my local area environment, do some NAS testing, some software testing, and have a little look at this camera and this Chime to see if this doorbell camera is right for you. Okay, so on the left hand side of the screen here, you should be able to see the Reolink desktop client software for Windows. And on the right hand side of the screen, you should see the mobile application that's running from Reolink on an Android device. And again, we have reviewed this software on multiple cameras previously prior to this video. The same goes for the desktop and indeed via the web browser as well. So I do recommend you check out some of those videos for some more in-depth stuff, but I will say that you can do quite a decent degree of configuration with the camera on either of these two methods. On the left hand side there, you can configure a lot of stuff about the general resolution and output there, but then going a little deeper you can change some of the saturation and brightness, and if you go a little further, dig a little bit more into the picture quality of those individual streams. And again, you can right click them and you've got all the different variable options there you can go through, and as far as the desktop is concerned, you can go into the display options there and pretty much have exactly the same options. There's a few extra ones, but pretty much largely the same. It's just a question of presentation. I will also say that certain features such as watermarking, privacy masks, all of those can be enabled on either side. It's all set up there for you to do exactly how you want to do it, be it desktop or mobile form. So I'm going to go ahead and ring that bell. So I'm going to get that there on screen. I'm going to go to the door now. Okay, so let's take a little look how that turned out. On the desktop here, we'll go into playback, and the same goes if we make our way into the Reolink there, we can go into the configuration options there and have a look at the historical recordings there overall. Go to the playback option, and as you can see on the desktop there, we can zoom straight in. We can go into the most latest recording there at the bottom of the screen, and the same goes, we can scroll along to this latest recording there of that pattern there, and we got them both there side by side on screen with their respective recordings. And again, we are accessing the camera via two different means here. So we did get the capture there. It did identify it as a human recognition there. Again, I know you might be worried slightly about the resolution of that image. I will highlight when it comes to the resolution of the image, I am utilizing this on a sort of lower frequency there because I'm using OBS at the same time. And on top of that, it is also worth noting that you can go straight ahead and download these in a slightly higher quality. I'm not going to say it's tip top, but I will say you can go ahead and download these files locally if you need them. But the picture quality will be kind of based on those resolution settings that you choose to use within the two streams you have. I'm not going to say this is the sharpest camera in the book, and it's certainly using a much more compact lens there, but I will say at the very least we've got that recording. And with we've got the notification coming through, hopefully there on screen that you saw that. Hopefully it wasn't restricted by the AS recording pattern there. I've already seen it on previous tests that I've done earlier on. I mean, if you've already got an existing Reolink system, you've got the options of other cameras, but you've got stuff like, as mentioned earlier, the pre-motion and the post-motion recording. So when it recognizes motion, it will record the previous few seconds that it had buffered in advance. You can have that recorded schedule, whether you want that to happen in real time or not. And then you've got the notification with regards to, you know, how you want to receive those push notifications on the local client devices, whether it is you're going to be using the mobile client or just using it more as a doorbell with a little bit of surveillance rolled in. Again, if you want to learn more about the software, I'm not going to labour it too much because I've reviewed a lot of Reolink cameras in the past, so you can check out most of those. But I think the next question a number of you might have is to do with the Reolink Doorbell on the mobile, on Synology's desktop application here, Surveillance Station. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete that camera there, because I will say it's worth highlighting that when we're accessing the camera via other means at the same time, that does have a tendency to make things problematic. So what we're going to do here is to kind of see how and where we would sign this camera up to the system. So again, thanks to our good friend RJ over the surveillance guy. He did give us an idea of how to add this currently, but it's not officially supported. This camera here that's listed is not my camera. What we need to do is give our camera a name. So I'm going to call it Reolink Doorbell just in case there's any issues with the one we had earlier, put it there. Next, we're going to have to choose the brand, and we're going to go for Reolink, but the key thing, according to RJ, is to go ahead and select a predefined camera. So the one that he recommended going for was the 510A, and from there, add that IP that we can see there on the left-hand side of the screen. And of course, that will differ depending on your own personal setup, but that will make sure that it's set to HTTPS 443, which is what you want. Click Add, click Next. It will then ask you to authenticate this camera, so add the login information that you created for this camera when you first set it up for the first time. So in my case, I'm just adding that there. Click Authenticate, and it should see the camera. But just bear in mind, if you start using this camera with either the Reolink application for desktop or utilizing it with the mobile application, you're not going to be able to utilize it in the NAS. It's still nice to know this doorbell camera is supported by Synology NAS, but it would have been nice to kind of not have to use a slight workaround in order to do so. So it activates that camera there in the background. We can open up the monitor center. And again, I'm using a very budget end camera for this. I'm not utilizing anything particularly highfalutin. NAS, I should say. But the NAS here running, we're just going to let it continue to activate there. And really, that's it. We are going to fast forward just a moment there just to show that the camera has been added. So I'm just going to fast forward now. And there you go. It was a slightly slow process, but the camera has been enabled. We can view it here in its own private window there on screen. And again, you can flick between the different streaming settings there as you might, might wish. So again, it will kind of automate things depending on the bandwidth, just like any other camera from utilized in Synology surveillance station platform there. And indeed, we can come out of that, go straight into the live feed. Sort of exit it there because I think I had it running there in the background earlier. What we can do is open up the monitor center, find our Reolink doorbell, pop it into that, and just like any other camera, we can go ahead and utilize it. But what about when we press the ringing button? What's going to happen on our Synology NAS? Because we know that the initial plug there with the chime does activate, and we know notifications come through to the desktop and the mobile. But what about now? So I'm going to go ahead and ring this bell. I'll be right back. Interestingly, although I didn't hear any kind of notification from this end, if we make our way into the previous pattern here and we look at the recordings, we can make our way in. Let's fast forward into the current time. So again, we're looking at around about 3 o'clock. Let's go for it there. We can zoom in. It didn't really seemingly notify anything from what I saw. Perhaps you saw something slightly different there on screen. But what I was going to highlight was when I was ringing that bell, what was quite cool was that it did the audio notification, the voice message there on the other hand. So as you can see there, when I walked away, you probably didn't hear it on your side, but it has that auto reply settings where you can either record your very own message or go ahead and use a pre-existing message if you want people to just wait at the door a little bit longer.
Be right there. Please wait a moment.
But still, nonetheless, the option that you can add this at least to the surveillance station application, and then from there within the IP camera settings, you can go ahead and maybe start configuring these so we can have a look at the recording patterns. And yeah, we've got all of those options we'd like to see. We don't really have any specific doorbell ones, and I do know that you can head over to Synology for kind of requested features or ask them to look into it. But at the very least, you can go ahead and utilize a lot of the surveillance station features for this doorbell on your Synology NAS there, which is always going to be quite handy indeed. And whether it is that you're going to be utilizing a NAS with this doorbell camera attached there, or you're going to be utilizing the Reolink application either as the mobile app or on the desktop, it's still a decent enough little doorbell which really does satisfy, I think, an itch to a lot of people that are less keen to use predominantly cloud-based services like Ring might find quite interesting. intriguing. So let's go ahead and head back into the studio and summarize today's review. Well, what do I think? Well, first and foremost, I think it is important that we highlight that right now there are barely any IP doorbells that you can utilize in the majority of NAS systems. No NAS brand has released their own, and therefore having a doorbell camera that is compatible via OnViv with a multitude of different NAS devices right now probably puts the Reolink Doorbell camera way ahead of most of the pack out there, when the majority of them are overly reliant on their own proprietary storage and proprietary software. Now, above and beyond that, we've got to talk about the product itself. I will say I like the build quality there. I like the fact that it's got a few little optional extras. I like there's a PoE. I like that there's, you know, a Wi-Fi supported model and that PoE as mentioned there. Also, I've always said before that I think the Reolink software is pretty robust, whether it is you're utilizing a desktop or a mobile application as your preferred GUI into this camera. I won't say the lens is going to blow anyone away. They can talk a lot about that area of coverage there and the pixel depth over that, but ultimately this isn't going to be comparable to bigger cameras that we've talked about in the past, which are going to have a wider, more kind of high range scope about them. This is supposed to have an area of effect there, and I think in that field this does well enough. It's not the most cutting edge camera, but it's not really supposed to be. Now, when it comes to a lot of the architecture of utilizing it, whether it is that plug-in tone, and again there weren't that many tones included, there was about 10, maybe 12, and I will say with those tones at least 7 of them were super irritating. But then the fact that you can pre-record your own stuff, such as that alert when people come to the door, whether you want to use your own or utilize some of the presets there, they weren't too shabby. And we can't ignore the fact that it is supported by smart home. And again, check out RJ's channel where he did some testing with Google Home and lots of stuff online, just to show that this does integrate well into existing home assistants. Now, the price tag is probably one of its more endearing features for a lot of users out there that want to step away from that subscription ring type stuff there in the smart home arena. Not all of them are subscription based, but it has to be said with this arriving around that 100 nicker mark, a little bit above, a little bit below, depending on which version you go for, it's going to be appealing. I wish it arrived with its own pre-built storage and you didn't have to pop in your own SD card, but it's a small criticism indeed given the price tag of what you're getting and the utility that it does open up to you. So overall, although I've been waiting a long time to review this camera, for the most part I think it has stood up to it, and arguably this should hopefully give a little kick up the bum to a lot of brands out there that are rolling out their own smart cameras, smart doorbell cameras, and making them more universally utilized in home MVRs and of course home NAS surveillance systems. But this has been my review of the Reolink camera doorbell. What did you guys think? Maybe you've already got hold of one of these and you've got more 3-6 months extensive testing under your belt. Let me know in the comments. We will have a written review over on NAS Compares relatively soon. If it's not already live below, it should be live within the next week or so. And if you've got any questions about this camera, we may be doing a follow-up video on this, either with RJ or just generally here on the channel, where we investigate kind of the range of doorbell cameras that are actually supported on NAS devices right now, be it with Synology Surveillance Station, QNAP QVR Pro, Asus Door Surveillance Center, or more. So do check those out when they are live. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. If you have found this video helpful, and if you were going to shop at Amazon, Scan, Newegg, B&H, any of those stores anyway, if those two things are true, use the link in the description to take you to those stores. Not only because it won't cost you anything extra, but anything, and I mean anything you buy when you go down there, will result in a kickback here to NAS Compares. It's just me and Eddie and allows us to keep doing what we do. Otherwise, if you need free advice, use the free advice section linked on the NAS Compare page. That's the blue button on the right. Use the free community support forum and ask NAS Compares, and you can even use our Discord as well for us to help you out in any way we can. There are a few options on there if you need something pretty immediate, but there is a whole huge range of free support options there. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.